Nick Eubanks is the founder and chief strategist of From the Future, a digital strategy consulting firm based in Philadelphia. He's also a partner at Traffic think tank, the #1 private SEO community, and co-founder of Super Limited CO, a venture studio focused on buying, building, and operating digital assets. In his free time, he likes to spend time with his wife, dogs, and cats. Nick, take it away.
Thanks for having me, Mari. I'm really excited about this. I've been dying to talk about this for like a year and a half, and I've only had like a handful of conversations in TTT where I've really gotten to sort of dig into some of the details, but I've never laid out everything. So this is like soup to nuts. This is the whole, this is sort of the whole shebang. So I'm sure a lot of people are probably going to be pretty upset with me that I'm sharing all this, but I hope everybody enjoys it and hope it gives you some ideas. So without further ado, this is how to maximize link equity faster than Google says is possible. The very first thing that I want to do though, if it's all right, is I just want to take a moment and just have a moment of silence for Hamlet. Was a good, was a friend of mine, and he will be sorely missed. So just gonna take a moment here. All right, moving on. He's watching over us, so hopefully he appreciates this. So quick disclaimer before we get started. What I'm about to show you is not cheap, it is not easy, it is not even fast, and above all else, it is not guaranteed to work. So keep an open mind. The effectiveness of this strategy, outside of everything that I'm gonna walk you through, is making sure that the content that is being produced for the site you're trying to rank is actually like really in-depth, well built out content to be representative of that topic, and that you have your on-page, on-page optimization attributes, and then your technical on-site stuff all dialed in pretty well. So with all that out of the way, let's talk expired domains. How happy would you be if this was your domain and you first pushed it live in November of 2019, and it was a DR of 0, and then by January 15th, so 60 days later, you're at a DR of 50, and then you're able just to continuously climb, over a period of about 10 months. To 50,000 organic visits, 11,000 of those being commercial intent, and a DR of 70. So this is where the rubber sort of meets the road. This is how most people still think expired domain redirect strategies work. They think you buy a domain, maybe it's got some topicality, and we'll redirect that domain into my money site. Cool, I got another domain, pick this one up at auction, GoDaddy. I'm gonna wait a month or two, let that last one settle out. Cool, I'm gonna redirect this one in. And I'm just gonna keep folding all these sites in, and Google doesn't know any better, and it doesn't matter if I do any topicality matches, and I'm just gonna make all this money with all these rankings that are going to explode up into the right. That's not actually how it works. Not anymore. It did work that way for a long time, and maybe in some industries, especially probably, churn and burn, I imagine, types of SERPs, it probably can still work for a limited time, but I don't see it holding up sustainably. And it's just way too risky, in my opinion, even if you do it what I consider to be the right way, which is what I'm going to show you. So the way that it can actually work is you need to break it into phases. And the very first phase starts with the acquisition of the domain, which I think a lot of people don't pay near enough attention to. And then you have to resurrect what was on there to establish the topicality that used to be there and try to bring some of that scoring and signaling back. Then you got to make sure you get that indexed and that topicality actually comes back. And then you also have to wait for it to stabilize before you start screwing with it. What does all that mean? Start with the domain analysis. So step number 1, is the domain still indexed on Google? Literally take the domain, the raw domain, go to google.com, drop it in there. Does it show up? Are there any URLs in that domain that are showing up? If the homepage is not showing up first, it's not the end of the world, but it's not a great sign. Then you're going to dive into the link profile. So you need to, the way that I do this is to export all of the root domains from Ahrefs. So like go into the root domains report, one URL per domain, or one domain per URL, whichever that setting is. Export all of those, filter for a DR threshold. My minimum is 15, I prefer to use 20. And then you'll make an initial evaluation, you'll check for spam, and then you actually go through the process of evaluating it for topicality. So Here's an example of how I would do evaluation. So for this one, I'm doing DR over 15. I'm not even, so usually there would be topicality flags in here. So like for a bunch of these, if you look at like Bitly is in here, that one would get pulled out. Medium is no follow, but still worthwhile in my opinion, still a good link. Again, it's natural, it's contextual. But like I'd pull out a bunch of the stuff that was not topically relevant in here. And then I would assign a value to what each of those domains was worth. So at this one, at 393, I think I was using $100 or $200 value. So on the basis of links alone, those 393 root domains that are over 15 on this basis would be, make this domain worth roughly $58,000 on the basis of links alone. So then you got to move on to doing a spam check. And I still really love using Majestic to do a lot of some of this initial sort of spam looking, because the metric balance between CF and TF, trust flow and citation flow, is something that's really easy to sort of pay attention to. And you can usually spam one of those metrics, is something Ian Howell showed me. You can usually spam one, but not both. So if those are close enough together, it's usually a good sign that it's a relatively natural and relatively strong link profile. One of the tricks to using Majestics is you can't just use the fresh index. You have to also compare it to the historic index, right? So I used FTF as an example here. So if we look at our fresh index, we can see that the TF has actually gone way down. Our trust flow has gone way down in the TTF categories that we currently represented, but our CF is held relatively strong. So we're still, links from our site are still worth a whole bunch, but the trust flow that's actually coming with them is not going to be as strong. But if we look at historic, this is why we want to compare these. So look at TTF's actually gone down. If you look at where this was versus, and my guess is that a lot of this is probably looking at a bunch of content that was on our old domain before we moved to the new .agency domain. But the important part here was I want to make sure that the historic version of the domain, if I'm looking at a domain to buy and I'm looking at picking something up that had a bunch of history and has pages cached in archive.org, I really want to make sure I look at the historic index as well to make sure that not only have the TTF categories not changed dramatically, but that there weren't major swings over time between the CF and TF. So here you can see, like, this is the historic versus the fresh. We can actually look at over time, both of like how there's not been a significant dip, so it's relatively safe. And then we look at the TTF for both. We look at again, top is historic, bottom is fresh. Historic computers, programming languages, computer, internet, web design, business, marketing, and advertising. Same. Multimedia is in there. That's still close. It's still that maroon color, so it's still in the computers parent topic. Business services is still in there. Software. So we can see that we're actually, the historic index is probably a better representation of what the topicality is that FTF would actually be ideal for. Next step then is actually resurrecting the old site. So this is a big part of it too, is you don't want to buy the domain just because they have links. You need to go look at the site, spend the time going through archive.org, understand what the site was about, make sure that it fits within just sort of the general topical universe, which I'll come back to a little bit later, but it has to be, it has to be in that wheelhouse. This actually segued beautifully from Amanda's presentation, where she was just speaking to tangential content and like how many sort of like degrees away can you go from like the core topic, to where it's almost, it's too far out, but staying within that sort of tangential space, within that boundary, it's the same idea. You need to be sort of within that balance. Then you resurrect the site. A big thing that I do that I think a lot of other people don't necessarily do is they don't clean up the site. They resurrect it. They download it from archive.org. They get the pages back up. Maybe they'll fix some of the broken links, but they don't actually turn it into like a nice website like that a company in 2021 or 2021 would have up and probably be using. And then you just want to monitor, what the index rates look like in GSC. So here's an example. So here's the archival download of one of the sites that got full. So in this case study that I'm going over, everything I'm showing you is all this one domain. So in this case, this is one of the sites that was purchased and resurrected, cleaned up. So this was the initial resurrection from the download from archive. Here's the cleaned up site. So moved it over to a mobile-friendly theme, gave it an actual global navigation, added some topics, links to some category pages and stuff to flow some of the internal link equity, back into the site. And so then site's up and cleaned up. Now we want to make sure that it gets indexed. So submit the sitemap. You'll expect a bit of a spike, and then you'll pay specific attention to which URLs are popping back in the index first. And because those are usually the ones that are going to have the strongest, not only link profile, but the strongest rankability. And then this is sort of what that looks like, right? When you're standing a site back up. So you resurrect the site, you'll have a big pop in initial impressions, probably not many clicks. And then hopefully, if you did your homework right on the domain evaluation, you'll begin to see that stabilization. You'll see those clicks, start to come back. The nice part is if you're seeing more clicks than impressions, it's a good general sign. You can see where it actually picks up. The curve actually picks up here after that initial stabilization period. But that stabilization is really important. You want to let things sort of teeter out. So what I was saying at the very beginning, it takes patience to do this. It's not a super fast process. And then once you've done that, you redirect the URLs over into your target site. No, that's completely wrong. That's how you waste tens of thousands of dollars and blow shit the fuck up. No, that is exactly the wrong thing to do because you haven't actually done anything to dial in that topicality, to actually make it a fit, to make it worthy of transferring that link equity. Enter phase 2. Now's the part where we actually go and we do the topical analysis, not based on what we think and what Majestic's telling us, but what Google themselves are telling us within GSC. Then we're going to focus on shifting that topicality to be a better fit for what it needs to be for us and for our monetization strategies. Then we migrate the content, and then and only then do we actually do the redirect. So, topical analysis. Generally, you want to let the, once you've stood the site up and you're letting it sort of settle out, you're waiting for that stabilization period, you want to let that sit generally for 90 days. Having 90 days of GSC data at least is a minimum. You can go shorter, but I don't. I like to have at least that sort of minimal amount of data within my sample. You'll then filter for pages, clicks, and impressions, sort of sending by organic impressions, and then you'll be able to look for query topics and potentially even modifier patterns that are receiving impressions, and start to think through how to map those, to the subtopics or ancillary tangential topics that you're going to be supporting on your money site. So here's an example. That site that I was showing you had, this document directory with a bunch of chemical pages on it. These were those chemical pages. We just let it sit. So right, put it up, resurrected it, cleaned it up, didn't change any of the URLs, just let it sit and waited to see what happened. You can see that this initial one here, so vinyl coal, whatever that is, had the most impressions. Then there's this methylic, which has these are a bunch of drug interactions. But you can see down here, right? So there's 2 pages that are really important to pay attention to here. One is that cannabis page, and then there's the supplement one, American supplements page down at the bottom. Both of those are going to be fantastic for a CBD business, cannabis business, derivatives business. Those are going to be the topicality that you'll be able to shift the easiest and transfer most of that sort of tangential within the wheelhouse sort of topical segment over. That's why we need to let things shake out, and that's why we need to let things stabilize. We need to not make guesses, but let the data show us where to go. Once you have a general idea of what the topicality is, and how Google is sort of scoring the topicality of the old URLs, the old original content, now you start to map your target topics and keywords to those indexed URLs that are on that site that you resurrect. Try to think about this at a category level, though. So it's not one. It's not like. Well, I'll come back to this at the very end because there's a big caveat there. So you'll create the new content that will be the final content that you will actually have living on like the ultimate target page. So like the URL that you're gonna create on your money site that you would want to rank, that's gonna support your monetization strategy. That's where you're going to, you create the content that's going to live on that page. You don't publish it there. You publish that content on the most topically relevant URL that's on your resurrected site. You don't change the URL either. So what this means is I would go back to that cannabis site if I was building a CBD site, and I would write all of my CBD content that's going to live on the page that URL will get redirected to, but I'm going to publish it on that page first. I'm going to shift the topicality of the URL at that page that has the link value. I'm going to do this before I move anything, before I change any of those signals. I'm just changing the on-page content, not changing the URL. I can't say that enough. A lot of people do that and shit the bed. Then you're going to monitor again that topical shift as that happens in GSC, right? So there's the new content being published. There's your spike in impressions. There's clicks following on, and we wait. If you're in here, if you're somebody who is, I don't know. I know a lot of people they'll wait a week. If you would have waited a week, you would have gotten to here. It looks flatlined and total shit. You panic. You're like, fuck, it didn't work. Domain's burned. Wasted all my money. You pull the redirect. You sell the domain. You go back to work. You go back to work and figure that this strategy doesn't work. It's because you didn't wait long enough. There is patience to this. You look at this impression line. We need to let the impression line shake out and then begin to pick back up to start, beginning to aggregate some semblance of clicks. And this is what's really nice is if you look down here at the queries that we're actually starting to see the highest impression rates for over here, they're the ones that we want to target. We're shifting the topicality of that page to be from, this one was about drug interactions with cannabis, to cannabis types, sativas, plants, moving it more into the wheelhouse of the topicality that it needs to be for us and for our, our money site. So the next thing then is one of the other things you'll do while you're on, starting to publish the content, your ultimate content that will be on your target site, on your resurrected site to change that topicality, is you're also going to be doing a lot of consolidation of pages, content, URLs on that site that don't fit your specific need. So like, let's say we were building a site and we had one main money page about chili, and we sold chili cookbooks and chili cooking accessories and a hot pot and all this other shit, but we only really had that one page, and we didn't want to build a bunch of topicality around it. It just didn't fit into the structure, the architectural structure that we had designed for that page and that monetization strategy. We would want to look for all of the other sort of subtopics, ancillary, tangential topics on the site that we're not going to be creating content for, but that have links and have some relevancy within that old site graph, within Google's cache. We want to redirect those all together and start consolidating them on the old site. Again, we're not doing any new redirects to new domains yet. This is still just old site cleanup. This is patience. This is actually doing the work. Then and only then do you actually start the migration process. So create the new page with your perfect page title, meta attributes, URL, that on your target site, on your money site, on the domain. Then you're going to copy and paste 100% of all of the content over to that page. One important thing that sometimes we should always look at, but sometimes it works differently, but I've only ever really seen it go one way or the other, is sometimes when you resurrect that old page that's doing really well from like a topicality scoring perspective, and you let it shake out and you let it stabilize, you shouldn't just replace all of the content on that page with your new content. Instead, you take all the content that was there, you move it down, and you put your new content above it. You don't want to change, like fundamentally change everything on that page, because Google still has all that content scored. There's still some topicality relevant. You want to beef it up and you want to shift the topicality. So it's not changing from the left lane to the right lane. It's like putting your right tire over the median a little bit, maybe riding in the middle, like your Clark Griswold, a little more so. And then you'll publish the page once you've got that content on. This is on your new site, your target site, your money site. Page is published. Then you redirect that source URL from your resurrected site that has the same content on it to the new destination URL, not the domain, just that URL, one-to-one. You're going to move this content over one page at a time. And when you do, you're going to submit the old domain's XML sitemap through GSC, and you're going to try to brute force those crawls. You want to get those 301s picked up. You want to get those indexed. This is probably the biggest crux of success in my experience, and the biggest nuance of doing this in a way that I feel like is actually somewhat sustainable, or at least it's been sustainable so far, which is you don't think about folding. When you buy a domain at a category level. So let's say that this was my site about this was my site about outdoor food, whatever. So like one of my categories might be about chili, and again, I realize this would shift sort of that consolidation play, because we might want those old posts as hubs, or pages as hubs around our chili hub, our spokes around our chili hub. But again, so let's imagine for an instant here though that we have, so we're doing a site around outdoor cooking. So we're gonna have a content on a domain on chili. We're gonna have a domain on chicken, or a category on chili, category on chicken. We'll have a category on vegan and a category on vegetarian. We would ideally then want to find domains that had a strong topical focus on chili, on chicken, on vegan, on vegetarian, and we would be moving those all the content in those at the domain level, the topical domain level, into a dedicated category within this single site, and all of the posts that would be bringing over or be getting redirected and consolidated in would all stay within that category. The last thing we would ever redirect, and it's very touch and go, is we would, as a last move, when everything is done with that domain, all the interior pages have been folded in, the site's cleaned up, everything's done, the last thing we'll do is we'll add a link on the home page to the category page that we're moving it to. And we'll see what the net effect is in terms of rankings and impressions, paying attention to that for a week or two. Then if things look good, if they don't move, if you're not expecting an uplift, we're looking for is we want to see if it tanks. There's a weird thing about homepage links when you're doing this. Specifically, in several instances, we have redirected in, once we folded in all the other pages, we have redirected in the home page to the category URL, one-to-one. And everything underneath it flows beautifully. We matched it up with regex. We've done that several times, and the entire domain's rankings have tanked, or that category's domain rankings have tanked, and you unhook the redirect in 2 or 3 days, all the rankings come back. And so we've got 3 home pages on this. So we've redirected 5 domains into this site so far. 3 of them, the home pages are still up live, not redirected. They're out there and they will be potentially forever. All the interior pages have been moved over, all the links have been transferred, all the rankings, everything, but those home pages we can't move in because for some reason it screws up sort of the balance of equity on the site, which is just a weird nuance. But then once you've moved the content over again, then you need to follow this architecture. It's critical. Then you do the redirect, right? Then you add the redirect cross-site. You watch that get picked up, and you watch things, start to happen and be wonderful. So we can see here, right? This is a page-level redirect. So here's the page. Again, I was telling you that this site was going to be, there's a cannabis angle for this specific site. So you can see at this page URL, this redirect goes live from this page on the old domain to this page on our target domain, and we see this begin to start to pick up. So we see, just in this, this period of time here for this one page, which just looks like a supporting content page, 55,000 impressions and maybe 300 clicks. And then here's what that redirect looks like in GA. So we can see there's a big bump in direct traffic. This first redirect that we did was had a lot of brand search traffic, which probably played some role in the overall momentum of this thing. But I've also done, I've used the strategy where we haven't got it. The domain that we pick up originally doesn't have a whole lot of branded search traffic, and it still works. This one, the biggest difference is just there's that you see that direct, the user. The user traffic curve that is not organic traffic, at least initially. And that was, but again, that's just this first redirect. So you can see we did a few others. So there was the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, and then we've done a 5th one more recently. And you can see how that actually shifted. So that first redirect, organic traffic is under 60%. Now organic traffic is closer to 80%. And a lot of the brand traffic is actually the brand for this site itself. We were able to transfer a lot of that brand equity and branded search into this domain, which worked out really well. And then this is just an actual look. If you want to see how DR growth actually works when you use this strategy over time. So you'll see a start at the very beginning here at right there, November, December. You can see it just slowly, picking up week over week, 5 points, 10 points, settles up, jumps up to 71, settles back down to 70, and this is where we've been riding out ever since. So I know I talked pretty fast there, but I wanted to try to leave a little bit of time for some questions and discussion. So thank you. Follow me on Twitter for more nonsense. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line. If you want to do this yourself and you need any help implementing or ask questions, let's chat in Traffic Think Tank.
Awesome, Nick.
Hold on, Mari. My sound turned off.
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Okay, I think I have sound again.
Okay, awesome. Wow, that was very interesting. I think also very interesting for our audience. And the first question is already in. Would you mind answering a few?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that was the goal.
Awesome. Where do you find domains to buy for the direction?
So I use DomCop, and I set alerts for all sort of my preferred metrics, and I just keep. I pay mainly to use it as the monitoring service. So I just have daily emails, and anything that hits any of my targets or any of the client targets or anything like that, I get an email and we'll jump in and buy. Every now and then you have to fight at auction. You're usually fighting with either other SEOs or probably like a brand manager, somebody who let a domain lapse. That happened with a law firm domain last year. That was actually a really fun story. But you'd be surprised how many times you can pick up, like one of the domains we folded into this domain. The first one we picked up was $6,000. The second one was $3,000. I mean, they're expensive. It's expensive for an inspired domain. A lot of sense, especially just but the link value was there. But I think the last domains we picked up, the last 3 were all like $300 or less. It's doing your due diligence, and spending the time going through, the link profile in Majestic and Ahrefs and going through the actual site and archive before you, start bidding on that domain. but yeah, it's actually, it's not terribly hard to find these domains. There is a service that's being built right now by a TTT member that is just going to focus on making it easier to find and surface domains that fit a lot of this criteria. So if you're not following Sean, what the hell is Sean's last name? He has a really great paid newsletter too. Sean, I can't believe I'm Markey. Sean Markey. If you're not following Sean Markey and you want to learn more about the expired domain stuff, and you want to have a handle at getting your hands on some of these domains, he's a good person to follow.
Nick, questions are flying in. I guess you hit a nerve with your topic. I think the first graph did it. The steep domain authority gap. So should I invest? Yeah, should I invest in GameStop?
You might have missed the boat at this point, but I mean, I don't know. So all I know is pre-day trading today was up almost 100 points from 345 to 445. So maybe you haven't missed the boat. But I'll take SEO questions too.
Okay. Florian asks, is there a difference between expired domains and auction non-dropped domains?
Yes and no. I mean, if you can get a non-drop domain, always get a non-drop domain. I don't really care if a domain has been truly expired, as long as there's still URLs in the index. I don't like going more than 6 months. Like if the site's been down more than 6 months, that's sort of my limit. But like, I think Ian's is like 18 months. So, you know, it's different threshold, I guess, for risk and what you've seen work and not in the past.
Is it realistic to see such development in domains that already have an existing, because this domain had a very low authority, it was a new domain, but with existing domains?
Yeah, so if you look at if anybody goes and looks at the link profile for trafficsafetystore.com, my old e-commerce company, you'll see where I used this strategy a couple times, especially when we bring in like new product lines where like we'd have an entirely new category we'd be adding, and I'd be like, shit, we don't have any relevancy for vests. Like, you know, so we're selling all the other really boring shit traffic products. So we'd be going out and finding like an apparel domain or a high visibility domain, running and safety domain. You can go tangential, but finding it, standing it up, changing the topicality, again, moving the content, redirecting it over. The reason I think it works is because if you forget SEO for a second, if you forget this strange bubble vacuum that we live in, and you instead look at the way the world works and the way business operates around the world all the time. Businesses buy other businesses every single day, and when they buy them, more times than not, they redirect the domains into the parent page. Like it's a normal way of doing business, and if you treat it as such, like the way that you would if you weren't just some slimy SEO trying to gain it for links, this is probably how you go about it, which is my hunch as to why it's still working until we break it as SEOs.
Okay, next question. When working on redirect URLs, how do you care about this page internet, because every page has different intent?
How do I care? Say that one more time. How do I care about page?
When working on redirect URLs, how you take care, I think, about this page internet, because every page has different intent.
How do I take care of page intent? So again, the way that, so like, in my example, took a page that was about cannabis drug interactions and turned it into a page about CBD versus THC. So it was already about THC. It was already about the chemical interactions and compounds in THC. It was very easy to transfer that. So that was an informational page that I kept as an informational page. I wanted to get all that link equity into the site. I wanted to get a really strong page to rank for, variations of keywords around CBD versus THC. And that ranking was important enough because if I had that ranking, I can link internally to all the product pages, the affiliate pages, all that other shit. That informational ranking is going to have way more search volume anyway and be way more difficult. So being able to shortcut that with all that pent up link equity, I'm not paying as much attention to the intent on that type of informational page as I would for example, like let's say I had a page, so I had a page about pain or a page about cancer, and I had a page about supplements for dogs, and then a segue into both of those, a subset would potentially be like supplements for dogs with cancer, dogs with pain. That would be one where, again, I'm writing for that affiliate, that commercial bottom of funnel intent. That's what's being published on the resurrected site. I'm letting that get up and get indexed and start like making its way in that on that site where it's kind of out of out of its element. But that page itself is very representative and has strong links. So, and I'm just waiting for that page to stabilize before I move it over to my domain that has an entire topical focus, ideally around whatever that, that category is.
Sounds like when is too much off topic? Because it seems like you can bring almost anything.
I don't think there's any formula for that, right? So for the site in the case study, the domains that were folded in, one was about pregnancy, one was about cancer, one was about children, one was about pain, and one was about like productivity and focus. So it was, they're all sort of in this supplement realm where we separated them as categories, but we were able to transfer again that topicality enough before moving them over to this very topically focused domain.
Okay. Next question. Are there cases when you just 301 the whole domain without resurrecting it in between?
The only time, no, not with an expired at this point. I don't see the value anymore. It's been a few years since I saw like just being able to do the redirect and watching the actual links, move over and be indexed and be counted. I think the links can move over and be out. I think it's way too easy for people to potentially flag shit like that, where they're just like, well, not gonna add any value to those links. We're just gonna discount the value, algorithmically we're gonna discount the value of those links. So no, the only way I would do that now would be like, again, if we actually bought another company and we weren't going to maintain any of that shit just to bring it over, or if we were buying additional, brand variations. Like if I was able, I'm bidding on a domain right now where if I get it, one of my main brand domains will be redirecting to that, not for an SEO play, it's like a brand management play. So no, for SEO, the answer is no, sorry.
Okay, Tony asks, how does this tactic stack up in terms of cost versus a longer-term link building strategy, removing the benefit of how quickly the expired domains approach can be?
Totally. So the total cost for this over those 10 months, including all of the content, all of the design, development, links, everything, was probably right around 100 grand, maybe 120 grand. But the site also just doing around 30 grand a month. So the payback period is, once it got up to that run rate, 28,000 a month, the payback period at that point was, they already hit the payback period by the time it got to that point. So it just becomes an annuity at this point, unless they sell it.
Okay. John asks, what are your criteria for TF and CF on Majestic when you evaluate the domains?
Minimum of 10 each. And again, and I stick to Ian Howell's rule of I don't want to see a 20% swing in either direction. So I want like roughly an 80% ratio between CF and TF. Otherwise, it's generally a pretty good leading indicator of spam.
Okay. Paul asks, is there a limit as to how many domains to buy before it starts looking spammy?
Yeah, I think so. If I go back actually and you look at the way that I do this, I literally wait for the rankings to get indexed, the link equity to transfer, DR to go up, and then I literally wait for it to start to settle down. And you see where it starts to go back down each time here. It starts to chipper back down. It's like, all right, now time for another one. Boost it back up, let it settle out, and that settle out period is just normal. But the important part is if you look at the left side of the screen and you look at the right side of the screen, right? So yeah, there's hills and valleys, there's mountains and valleys here, but it's always about lifting that baseline. So the baseline lifts, then we go up and it settles down, but it's still higher than it was before. But yeah, I think over time, maybe you can do this, I don't know how many times, but more than 4 or 5 times a year. My general rule of thumb is I probably would never do more redirects than like 1 per quarter. But that's just me. I don't have like data around that. That's more of just like a hunch, subjective feeling thing.
Okay. Muhammad, please ask the entire question again because I don't see it anymore. Dmitry asks, do you prefer .com domains over other rare TLDs when looking for expired domains?
Oh, doesn't matter at all. One of the best domains I've ever picked up. It was not that expensive because of the extension, but the link profile was baller. Was a .biz, and it was because some software company like put a lot of time and money into it back in the day. They got acquired, domain expired, sat there, and had links from like all these amazing software company vendors and publications. Didn't matter that it was a .biz. Again, you're not using these domains to build brands on. These are domains that we're leveraging for topical link authority.
Carolis asks, resurrection of expired domains and redirect afterwards to gain more DR to benefit existing domain. Looks like this is the dark side of SEO. What do you think?
No, this is gray, not black. Black is illegal. This is not malicious. You're not doing. Google is guidelines. It's not laws, and they have the best propaganda machine in the world. As a digital marketer, you have to stop taking what they say as gospel, or what any of the talking heads say as gospel. It's all shit. It's a business. They make billions of dollars. They make $480,000 per year in revenue per employee. Like Google is not our friend. And again, as long as you're not breaking this is against guidelines, it's not against the law. And I have no problem breaking guidelines, if it means I'm improving the lives and businesses of my clients.
Dmitry asks, can you redirect pages from one domain owner to two different but topically related money websites?
I would not split. I would not, no, I wouldn't. I mean, can you? Sure. I would not do that. That's just me.
Okay, and the final question from Carlos. Resurrection of expired. Oh, no, wait. He just posted that question twice. And yeah, apparently a very interesting topic and a lot of questions. So Nick will be with us maybe for the second Q&A. What do you think, Nick? Do you have time? Because apparently there are more questions regarding your subject. It's at in 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I can jump back in for a few minutes, but I can't stay for the whole thing. But yeah, okay. I'd be happy.
Awesome.